Right, hi guys, hello. So I'm answering these are the questions, section B questions of performance management, and I'm just going through them one by one. So our first question is question 238. Let's look at it. So the whole idea is that you've looked at this, you've tried to do it, and you're just really using this to revise. Okay, great. So we have this business called Duff Co, and they manufacture three products, X, Y, and Z, and they use this cost plus pricing method at the moment. They give us some blurb about them using the same materials. Um, so you think of them, you apply this, so you understand this applies across all units fairly. So it's not that they're using different products. And for many years, they've been using full absorption costing and absorbing based on direct labor hours. So they give us some information here, budgeted production and sales. We have the total, if you like, production. So these are all the units that they can possibly make, and we have all that. So I think it's all about the layout. You just want to make sure you have everything laid out nicely, and I'll take you to my spreadsheet of how I've tackled this. They give us some more information about materials, the cost of the materials. So whenever you see this type of thing where you have the amount in terms of labor, you're looking really to look at how long it's taking as well. You're thinking, well, if you're spending £30 and it's £12 an hour, so okay, I know that's about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. That's 3 hours. That's 2 hours. And then be very careful of this idea of the batch sizes. You can see here that if you're making them 500 units, you're thinking carefully, okay, right, so if I'm making 20,000 units, therefore, in each batch, if there's 500 units in a batch, therefore, there are, if you like, 20,000 divided by 500 in terms of the number of batches. And sometimes because you make things in batches, you can see here it's saying that these are the purchase order per batch. So in a way, um, we have we almost need to find out the number of batches for each of them before we can really kind of tackle this. Um, again, so then they sort of tell you that, okay, this is what it currently is right now, the overhead absorption rate per direct labor hour. So this is old school traditional, and they kind of break it up and then tell you, oh, this is what it's broken up into. So they're actually taking the overhead itself and broken it up, and they've given us the cost drivers. So our next target then becomes, how can we find what the overhead absorption rate is per cost driver? So the question is, we need to find the number of batches, the total number of batches, the total number of purchase orders, total number of machine hours, and then we can find a kind of overhead per driver, and then we can apply that. So oops, here we are. So yeah, so then we have the questions. So let me just go into my slides. I'm sorry, into my yes, 1 second. Let me just move something. Second, let me just move this. Yeah, okay. So here's question 238. So see what I've sort of, I guess because I'm on Excel and I'm doing it for you, I'm doing it on a sort of on a spreadsheet. It's sort of just because it's an exam. I mean, I have time. But I believe in your exam you also have Excel because you're doing it online. So try and make use of the Excel document, even though it's a bit creaky, I've heard. But try and make use of that. You can see what I do here is to lay out again my information. But what I do is to, yes, so I have everything out, number, there you are. And then I have the machine hours as well given to me, and I put in the demand. And the first thing I do, I think that's my very first calculation, is to calculate the number of batches. And that simply is, well, if demand is 20,000 and there's 500 in each batch, therefore it must be the demand by the number of units in each batch, right? So I have 40 batches of 500 giving me 20,000. 20 batches of 800 giving me 16,000, and 55 batches of 400 giving me 22,000. So I now know the total number. I have the batches, so I can find the total number of batches. And in terms of machine hours here, what you can see me doing is, if it's 1.5 machine hours per unit, therefore, the total number of machine hours to do with X must be 1.5 times 20,000, as this will be 1.25 times 16,000, as this will be 1.4 times 22,000. So if you look at my formula here, I literally am multiplying the machine hours times the demand, machine hours times demand, machine hours times demand. And in terms of orders, I'm told that it's 4 orders per batch, and you have 40 batches, 5 orders per batch, you have 20 batches, 4 orders per batch, you have 55 batches. So therefore, the total number of batches will be, if you like, the 4 times the 40 plus the 5 times it. So this is where I'm trying to get to, my total, so I can find, if you like, what this overhead is per driver. And so let's look at it. What I now have is, I'm told that my machine setup cost of 280,000. If my machine setup cost of 280,000, and therefore my total number of batches are 115, well, if I'm trying to understand what the cost is per batch, right? What is the cost per batch? Well, that must be, if you like, which is B14, which is the 280,000 divided by the 115, and that's what the cost is per batch. Let's look at the cost per order. I have now ordering cost of 316,000, and therefore, and then I know what the number of orders are, 480. So therefore, the cost per order must be this total of 316,000 divided by the 658. And then I have the machine running cost, but I'm told this time this is based on machine hours. So I've got the total number of machine hours. So I literally, again, you see what I'm doing is dividing this cost by the machine hours and doing exactly the same thing by the machine hours. You see. And so now I now have the base to work with. That's kind of the key issue here. So I guess now that I have all of this, I can go to a question and sort of see what they want from me. So let's go back to the question and let's see. So the first question says, what is the full production cost per unit using the current method of absorption? So the current method of absorption, is telling us, let's just sort of see what their argument is. Right, so currently they're telling us that they currently use this idea of £9. Let's just go so we can see the question again. They currently do this thing where they say, okay, listen, where is it? Yes, here we are. In the next year, they expect, and the company has currently calculated this to be £9.70 per direct labor hour, right? That's what they currently do. So I know it's £9.70 per direct labor hour. So they've told me to go to do this for which one I'm doing this for Z. Okay, great. So £9.70 per labor hour. There are, in this business, you can see here at a cost of I'm told that this was at £12. This was at £12 per labor hour. So right, remember this? I showed you this. I'll show you again. It tells us here that this was. Tells us here that this is 12. It's £12 per labor hour. So there's 2 hours here, 2 hours here for Z. So it means that if I'm applying that £9.70 to Z, I will be saying, well, that is in effect £9.70 times 2. Right, and that gives me 19.4. So now the question is asking about the full cost. So the full cost, of course, will be, well, it's materials, of course, plus its labor, plus this overhead, which gives us 71.4. So that is 71.4 for that one, which takes us nicely to this answer here, A. So number 1 is A. So you can see what I've done there. This is just the current method. Now they ask, what is the overhead costs per unit of X using activity-based costing? So now this is where we just have to be very careful. Let's look at the scenario here. So let's look at X. So in order to make 20,000 units, that's kind of how you have to address it. You can't really, you could, but that's just, I almost imagine you'd miss something out. Find the total overheads to make 20,000 units and just find what it is to make 1 unit. Because you know the total number of batches, you know the cost of a batch, Cost of a batch is 2434. So in terms of total number of cost of batches, that's what you see me doing over here. I literally say, well, 40 batches times that. That is the cost of 20,000, all the batches, which is technically 20,000 units. In terms of purchase orders, I know that you had 4 per batch, so you had 4 times, well, I know what the cost of a purchase order is, so you can see what I'm doing here is I'm saying 4 times 10 times 658, because in effect you had a total of 100 and I could have found the total number of purchase orders and written it down here as in 160, because it's 4 times 40, isn't it? 4 purchase orders per batch. So that's that. Then in terms of machine hours, it says here that in terms of machine hours, you have 1.5 per unit. So therefore, for a demand of 20,000, you would have, you can see what I'm doing here, B8 times B9, that's 1.5 times 20,000 times 5.19, because that's the cost per machine hour. And that's why I have that. And then finally, again, facility costs, again, I have here, this is based on machine hours again. So what I now have here is B8 times B9 again. Similar situation, driven by machine costs times 4.47. And then you can see here, this is the total of all of this. And what do? I literally just divide all of that by the total demand, and I will get £24.64. So slightly long-winded, but not impossible. Not impossible. So we have 24.64 taking you to B. So number 2 is B. Yes, number 2 is B. So let's look at C. The question C says, with using activity-based costing, total overheads allocated to product Z amounts to this, to this thing. What is the budgeted full cost for using activity-based costing for product Z? So nothing sinister. All they're now telling us is they've actually worked this out for us using activity-based costing. They've told us it's 576,583. So we know what the full cost is here for Z. We have 576. Oops, sorry. Let me just come to here. We have 576. I'll just put it here. 576. 576. 5. Just want to get it right. 576. 583. I don't want to change my page again, so I was just looking at the textbook. 573, 583, 576. So we have this. So, we know what the total demand for Z is. So literally, all I need to really do is just divide this thing by the total demand to find what the overhead is per unit. And now that I found the overhead per unit, because I know it's 576 divided by the demand, I can now add on to that its direct material and labor, right? Because that's what I need to complete this. And so I'm literally now taking, that's the direct materials, great, that's the labor, and that's the overhead based on activity-based costing, and that gives me 78.2. So if I go to my answers, 78.21, the answer there is B. The answer there is B. Then the next two questions are sort of written questions, but I think they're pretty good questions, really just trying to push your understanding of what's going on here. So what is it telling us? ABC can be applied to all overhead costs, not just production overheads. This is true. The whole idea is that we can somehow find a driver, and we can do that even for service costs. ABC produces a more accurate picture. It does, because we're able to break down these overheads and not just say they're based on labor or machine. So technically, as a result, pricing should be improved, which is the end goal, or one of the end goals, apart from monitoring costs. ABC recognizes that overheads are not all related to production and sales volumes. That's true. We're saying we're pushing past the boundaries of just volume. And this is true if the costs were primarily volume related, which is what traditional costing is pretty much saying, or overheads are small, then ABC would be expensive to implement. And so the answer here is D. The answer here is D. And finally, question 5. Using ABC So it's interesting here. So what they're saying is that using ABC, the production cost of X is very similar to using traditional absorption costing. Okay, so they're saying using either method, you come up with roughly the same thing. But the cost for Y is almost £10 less. So ABC has worked quite well for Y, giving us a figure. Say for example, it was whatever 200. Say for example, it was £60 using traditional. It's come out at 50. It's now 50, basically using ABC. So anyway, what's the thing? If the company decides to adopt ABC, the price of X will change. Well, not really, because X was pretty much the same, either method. So it's definitely not one. Um, if the company decides to adopt ABC, sales volumes are likely to remain unchanged. Well, that's true. Technically, nothing's going on here. Both are typically um, nothing has changed really with the costing method for X. The volume is still the same. Um, both methods reveal similar costs. If the company decides ABC, the price of X, Y will go down. Yes, when I say yes, you could say they might keep the price as it is, but they can afford definitely to bring it down because they found out that the costs are actually less. They didn't need to be charging that kind of price. So if they're doing a cost pricing, which they are, if they're basing it on the cost markup, then because the cost is less and you apply the same markup, yes, it will go down. So based on that cost, which we're told that they use a cost markup sort of method, then yes. A reduced selling price is unlikely to give rise to um, increased sales volumes. This is somewhat false, and I'm quite sure this is neither here nor there. Question 4. So the answer here, if you like, is B. These are your true answers. Cool, great stuff. So that's Duff question 238, and we'll carry on with the next questions.